I can kind of go through the projects we
That's a
have. Will that
good
work?
idea.
Okay.
We will call the meeting to order at this time, and
You'll need a motion on the
Motion.
minutes that were
motion on the
distributed from the
minutes
last meeting.
last meeting.
Mhm. Everybody get a chance to take a look at those?
Are they in here?
It should be first thing in your packet,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
after the agenda.
That was the, which meeting was that? I've already-
April 12th.
Yeah,
Seems like we just
Just a
had,
few days
I'm sure he did a good job.
was it a design review? Whoops.
There was one, it was that day also.
Yeah,
It was there.
that's right. We just, the planning portion was very short that day. It was just
Yeah.
talking about this, mostly talking about this upcoming meeting, and then we had a design review of a project
Right.
last time, which was, I forgot. Separate
So-
meeting though,
so-
but, if no one has a problem with the minutes, you can get a motion. and a-
Yeah,
and a
I'll
vote
I'll make
on
that
those.
motion, Terry.
okay.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
We second both.
Second.
Abe, a second.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
All
thank you.
in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Sounded unanimous to me.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Turn it over to,
All right. The third item on here is the North Main Street zoning map amendment. Mr. Raybeck's here. This is a property that he's had since 84. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. Since 1984. Did you all get the information I sent out, that Chad sent out, I say I sent out, but Chad sent that out, about that with the administrative report? That property has been, the lower portion has been some type of commercial use on and off for, again, probably since at least 84, probably before that.
Well, since
Yeah,
1926.
probably before that.
Yeah.
The property itself is zoned in R10. All the surrounding properties are also zoned R10, so there's nothing contiguous to necessarily connect to. The church on this way is R10 and all surrounding. We looked at the lay of the property, the fact that, again, it does have mixed use currently and has in the past with some residential upstairs there and the commercial downstairs currently. After Mr. Rayback and I talked for a while, the zoning district that seemed to make the most sense to us would be the C3, because C3 to us has been typically a buffer zone between the downtown area, and when you gotta get out to residential, we don't really have a C3 in that area currently, but this property itself already has off-street parking and those kinds of things that C3 requires, whereas C1 would be the other option. C1 does not have any of that requirement for that. It seems to be a better fit to us to be maybe C3, and seeing how it already has that off-street parking requirement and those kinds of things, so that way you don't have a property that maybe some point later on, after Mr. Rayback decides to sell it, building right up to the property line or those kind of things like you have in our downtown district. So he had made a request to have this property rezoned to be in the C3 zoning district. And after consulting with our future land use map from our comprehensive land use plan, it is designated as a mixed use for that parcel, which C3 certainly allows for mixed use, both commercial and residential, whereas its current residential designation is basically mostly just residential. So if you have other questions about that, Mr. Rayback's here, or myself, if there's anything we can answer. But what we're looking for is to see if the board wants to make a recommendation for or against to the Maine Town Council with regards to changing this map amendment, or making this map amendment to this particular parcel, making it C3.
It appears to be across the street from, is it the fire department or the
It's
public, the old
what's
fire
the
department?
old fire department, possibly future police department, I guess.
Yeah,
I think the town's using that now.
yeah,
And then
Yeah,
it's-
right, that's
in the
business.
town garage and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is.
I noticed on the tax records that the conditions for the building and functional utility, I don't know what that is. But it was listed as poor
Uh-huh.
well, is that the right? Yeah. And I was wondering if you had plans for improvements to the building and.
Well,
bringing
everything's
it up.
been, since I bought it, all the electrical has been brought up to code, all the plumbing, and, yeah, I'm not sure why it's still listed as
Still listed
poor.
as poor. Okay.
But, you know, it's got a new roof on it, it's, the remodeling was done in '86 is when I put the apartments in upstairs, and in 2000, I put 2 in the back, and in the downstairs was all done between '86 and present time, depending on the space.
Yeah.
Because when I got it, it was the Burnsville Vet Clinic and Dee's Manufacturing and Little Debbie's and then a woodworking shop.
Yeah,
But yeah, everything's been upgraded between '86 and the present time.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like it'd be good to bring it into its non-conforming uses in there now. I don't know when zoning hit Burnsville.
I'm
Probably in
not positive originally, but it's
80s
certainly a
or something.
non-conforming use at this
Yeah,
point right now.
That's why I had all that, you know. So especially if you're gonna sell it, probably needs to be a conforming use so that
Yeah.
the banks will provide a loan on
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah, it had been a problem in the past, and I didn't realize it was a problem now, because I tried to get commercial zoning years ago before the zoning even really existed.
Mhm.
And I was reassured at that time by Tom Story that said, no, actually, you're grandfathered in, you don't have to worry about it. Let's just not deal with it. And then, you know, it's been sort of that way since
Yeah.
until it just makes more sense. Well, actually, Brian called me and said, hey, we need to talk.
And, you know, if it remains as is, you know, Mr. Storer would be correct. It would be a non-conforming allowed use, but if anyone ever decided, Mr. Raybeck or someone else, develop the property, change that footprint and applies for zoning compliance
Yeah.
and has required of that, it's not going to be allowed because you're changing that property. So changing that designation to where the use is allowed would seem to be more appropriate.
Yeah. I agree.
So, do you need a motion to,
This would be a motion on the recommendation.
Approve or deny the map amendment recommendation.
There you
I'll
go.
second
And then along with that is the consistency, right? This one
And
is-
it's included as part of the recommendation.
Okay, so the two things that you will be voting on is to recommend for or against, to recommend, and then also saying that it is consistent with the future land use.
okay,
Okay.
do you have a motion?
Motion, make a motion to adopt.
I'll secretary, yeah, to make the recommendation
All
to
in
council.
favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Mr.
don't
Redmond.
Norman, I'm sure you would like to get rid of this building if in the future. This is pretty colorful history of this place. I had no idea that went back to 1926.
Yeah, one of the things we discovered when we were remodeling were like dozens and dozens of tires from what it used to be Carolina Tires.
Carolina Tire, yeah.
Yeah.
No little Debbie's?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, those things never disappear or rot.
You know,
Sort of like Twinkies.
Well, thank you all.
Thanks, sir.
Good to.
Norman, just so you know, this recommendation will go to the Main Town Council. They'll schedule a public hearing, and that will be possibly at the next council meeting. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. I'll be in touch. Okay?
Thank you so much.
So Brian, do you want to continue? with
I will,
what's-
I will. The next thing, we had talked a while back about, you know, when we had a moment and kind of caught our breath from some of the design review and projects that we have, of looking at some of the things that have kind of come to our attention as staff, between myself and Heather and Chad, the ones that developers may have brought to us, and those types of things of definitions and uses and those kind of things that might need to be looked at. So I had sent to Chad, I think he forwarded on to you all, these, some that have come across and been brought to our attention that are either missing definitions or maybe potential slight changes. So I'll kind of go through those if you like.
Yes,
In
please.
total, although it doesn't necessarily look like it with this, there's actually 5 different ones. The first one is 3 parts, and then there's 2 other ones. So I kind of go through those if that's all right, and then we'll just have discussions and see what you all think. The first one was, we don't really have a definition for light industrial. Our only industrial areas we have that are zoned industrial is basically Glen Raven and Tractor. And those are already completely in use in our I-1. That's all the I-1 that we actually have. It was brought to our attention that a lot of times, especially in smaller places that wind up being oftentimes adjacent to commercial areas, you'll have really light manufacturing where everything is self-contained within the building itself. The example that was brought to me, and I don't know the name of the business, but it's Taylor Togs, where Lucy Dahl works with working on electronics and those kinds of things. If you had something like that that didn't have a retail component with it, we don't really have a good allowance for that other than just straight industrial, which we don't, that way, if someone wanted to put something like that, we wouldn't have a place for them to put it without doing another one of these map zone amendments, because the only two areas we have that are industrial are currently occupied by industrial facilities that use the entire property. There's no area there. So we had done some research, found this definition that seems to be very consistent through what some other municipalities have used in their zoning, this definition for light industrial. I'll read through this just in case you haven't had a chance to look at it. The indoor manufacturing, processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, and packaging of products, and incidental storage, sales, and distribution of those products, which does not produce noise, odors, vibration, hazardous waste materials, or particular that will disturb and endanger neighboring properties. Another example someone gave was like an Amazon distributor place or something like that. We don't really have a location where anything like that could be located within city limits. This is another example. So that was the best definition we could come up with from searching from some other zoning districts had used. And to go along with that, that would be one consideration. Another would be adding that use to our existing use table and where it would be appropriate. It seemed to be the C2, C3, and I1 districts, but not allowing those within R10 or C1. C1 being our downtown, R10 being our residential. So limited basically to our commercial areas, or if we have future areas that, again, our current areas that are zoned industrial pretty well used up at the moment, but if we were to have some of that in the future, that would be an allowed use in the industrial area as well. And then I was able to find some additional, and then the third part of that one particular one would be the some additional standards to go along with, besides just, and again, anything that did come in would have to meet design standards, design guidelines. So those are not, they wouldn't be exempt from those. But in addition to that, with our standards table, the additional standards would be allowing for points of ingress and egress a sufficient distance from roadways, so you don't have, it's not causing traffic issues. You know, you can have the good flow of traffic for their employees or those types of things. Because sometimes these places will, you know, employ 10, 12, 14 people. You want to make sure that you're not causing a traffic issue if it were to be at a strip mall type area or something like that where there are others. And the not having open storage of any type of dangerous, offensive items, uncured items, explosives, gasoline, any sort of hazardous materials. You don't want to have an open storage issue where you might have other like businesses located near. That was something like that would have to be more towards your just straight industrial areas. So that would be the three different, there are actually three separate amendments that we're talking about, but they would all be entailed with the same thing. Just making a definition for it, saying where it would be allowed, and then the additional standards, if it were allowed, that they would have to meet.
Where would be a good location for just what you're talking about?
Well, we have currently, to say that someone could just go right into this building, I don't know of one right now, but we have some undeveloped property along 19. The one that I just right off the top of my head would come to would be the what was the Kenny Deaton property, the down near Carolina Mountain Realty that they cleared off. As far as, and I don't know what the plans are for the person that owns that, but if someone owned that wanted to put a light manufacturing there, currently they wouldn't be able to, or an Amazon distributorship or something like that. And it has roadway access. You know, for some uses like that, it might be a very advantageous position, but with our current ordinance, that wouldn't be allowed within that zone. That would be one area I could think of. I'm sure there are others,
Yeah.
but just as far as current properties that already exist, I don't know of any at the moment that would fit with.
I assume the second word, indoor,
Yeah,
indoor manufacturing,
Uh-huh.
and incidental storage, so all the storage would be indoors as well?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes along with the additional standard of the no open storage as well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the intention of that, in my opinion, for it to fit would be, it's a self-contained,
Yeah.
that you don't have that exterior storage of uncured materials or unprocessed materials.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked for the industrial ones that areas are in town, are they sort of on the far edges?
You've got one on each end, and again,
Okay.
the entire property is basically taken up by the business that has there. There's no
Yeah.
place to develop anywhere there.
Okay.
So you have a,
See them there in the purple, the little one there.
Yeah, Glen
Oh,
Raven
Yeah,
and
okay.
what people refer to as the old sock factory, but it's a tractor building, I think,
Yeah.
currently. Or no, it's Altech now, right? I'm sorry, I'm behind. Now Altech has that. I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Used to be tractor.
Alta, is Tractor's still in there, isn't it?
Are they?
I think they are.
They're moving if they're not already.
Yeah, I know that they're doing something on Love Fox Road, right?
Uh,
Or am I behind? No, sure. Once it gets outside city limits, I don't really know. No, I just stay within the city. Any other questions about that one? Would you like me to go on to the next, or would you want
do you need a motion
to? We
on
can do
that?
them all. I think
All
the way he has it, it's up to you.
There's 5 at the end if we want to.
Okay.
If there's
Will that work?
further
Yes,
discussion.
Okay.
yes, you go right ahead.
All right. Well, moving on to the next one. Our design standards are there, and there's only a few exceptions. One that don't apply, and those are smaller residential developments or dwellings. It was pointed out to us that those were maybe sort of intended more for larger, as far as it applied to residential. And our definition of, we have two definitions of, there's Paul right there. You didn't get stopped by the police anywhere, did you? Making
Well,
that
I
kind of
thought
time?
maybe you would have called ahead.
Well, I mean, I have an officer out there that likes to meet people. I just wanted to make sure you had. Anyway, we've been through the map amendment, and that was approved.
Great.
And we had a slight discussion about the light industrial, and I'm on to the multifamily design standards,
Yep.
sketch and Joe.
All right, great, thanks.
So we have two definitions in our ordinance for multifamily use. One is 4 units or less, and one is 4 units or more, anything bigger. And the distinction, in my mind, being the smaller would be like triplexes, quadplexes, things like that. Larger would be the apartment buildings and those types of things. The way ours is set up, the smaller of those are permitted with standards, while as the larger of those require a special use permit. There's a whole process for those. It was pointed out by some developers that having design standards apply to both of those equally seemed peculiar. You definitely want it on the larger projects, but maybe the smaller projects, because they are smaller residential developments, putting those same design standards to those might be a bit onerous. So
Are those the design standards that apply to the Main Street area?
commercial, and those void to solid ratio and those kinds of things, those the way it's currently written, would also apply to like a triplex or something like that, a smaller residential property. So the change that we have recommended is excluding just those smaller ones, those only making them be more than 4 units, which will be your larger apartment buildings and those kinds of things. Still having the design guidelines apply to those, but having it be excluded from the smaller developments. Does that make sense?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay. If I can do anything to clear it up, I will, but that was just, we've had some developers approach us talking about doing maybe some triplex development in places, and they said if we have to meet design standards with those, it just puts one more obstacle they have to overcome for smaller developments.
Okay.
And they, certainly felt like for larger developments it was appropriate, but
Was
larger.
there a particular design standard that they were having a problem with?
This was relayed to me by through someone else, so I don't know if there was a particular one that they had an
Yeah.
issue with.
Yeah.
But I know those, those design standards, that section, is it 8, I believe it's 800. There's quite a few things going there with land, when you get into landscaping and those kinds of things that have to take place. And again, we exclude single family and dual family This is just actually kind of adding the triplexes or quadplexes would be the only other ones that would be excluded. Everything else would still be applied. And again, those are special uses too, so there would be a whole other process. It wouldn't even be just a normal permitting process for those. It'd be a special use process.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, the last amendment, so that's 4, and this would be the 5th, would be the density requirements for commercial districts. We have had some conversation, again, with some developers about the fact that in our commercial, if you look at our current density table, what we require for lot size, ours are exactly the same for everything except for industrial. Everything is 10,000 square feet, industrial is 40,000 square feet, but there is no variation. They asked me to do some research. I looked up, I'm trying to remember the jurisdictions. I actually looked at Waynesville, Weaverville, Spruce Pine, and for some reason we always kept getting referred to as Sparta. I guess Sparta is a very similar sized town to us, but I know where they've had salary studies and things that Sparta is a very, as far as demographics, is very similar to us. None of those had any density requirements at all as far as lot size for commercial districts. Not residential, but commercial. Most of those will have several residential districts, whereas we only have the one. But the commercial requirements as far as overall lot size, now some of them, like us, also have setback requirements. Whereas there's how far you have to be from your neighbor, so that can still limit the size of the building that you can necessarily put. The only place we don't have setback requirements, again, is our downtown C1 district where you have buildings side by side. In looking at that, as far as, we thought about just making there be no requirement, but that seemed maybe a little bit too far. So the recommendation that staff has made is bringing it from 10,000 to 7,000 within the C3 district, and then 10,000 to 5,000 within the C2 district, which C2 district is your bypass, should be your heavier commercial, whereas C3 starts to move more toward mixed use in that buffer zone and making it slightly higher, and then remaining the same in residential at 10,000 square feet per lot. There's a lot of words I said.
Can you repeat what those numbers came from?
10 piece.
They're both 10 before.
Everything, currently, everything we have, other than C1, well, C1 is no lot requirement, but both of those are 10,000. There's 10,000 for C2, 10,000 for C3, and 10,000 for R10. There is no difference. And again, other jurisdictions do not have that same lot requirement. They just maintain setback requirements so that the buildings are not built necessarily too close to property lines. So someone can fit a building in and still maintain the distance from their neighbors.
Yeah, C1 is, well, no setbacks.
Yeah, that's our downtown square and just off.
It might allow somebody to infill with a tiny home on a lot that they normally wouldn't be able to put a residential.
And that is a
facility on.
possibility. Real estate is certainly at a premium right now, and the places where people can easily develop is starting to get less and less. That's been some of the motivators of this, is if you still have those large requirements, especially if somebody's looking to build several, and so divide that out. If you're having to fit 10,000 per lot, it makes it more difficult. Especially, and also with if you want to do some sort of commercial venture and stuff. And again, these are the commercial areas we're talking about, the C2 and C3, which do allow for mixed use. It's not like it's only commercial. We certainly have residential in both those areas. But
I don't know if someone would build a tiny home in a C1 too.
Well, it may be that there's, they got two lots next to each other and they're living on one and they build it, for a relative or something.
and we've had,
One of the issues we have here that we talked about in the planning effort was that we have a lot of undeveloped, small infill lots that just are sitting there, and that, to increase the tax base, one of the things we can do is make it easier. The thing that kind of triggered me on this was all the setback requirements are still there. And so if it's really small, 5,000 feet, they still might not be able to fit something in there depending on the size of the lot and the setback requirements. So that setback requirement to me kind of is a safety valve on the smaller lots.
And again, this currently doesn't apply to R10 district, which is the bulk of, I mean, if you look at the map, it's,
That's staying as it is.
yeah, it's staying as
Yeah.
is. This is just your commercial district, your C2 and C3 district, which are mixed use.
Who's going to put a tiny home in it? Probably not.
Can you have a house and then on the same lot put a tiny home?
You can, we have an allowance now for an accessory dwelling
Accessory
unit.
dwelling?
There are limitations on how, with the size that can be.
Yeah.
It has to, but yes, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. We had.
Yeah, there was a house up Swiss that had it was for sale.
Yeah.
Are there any
Unit
restrictions
behind
or
it.
things for tiny homes?
They have to be built to building code. And if they are not stick-built homes, if they are manufactured homes, they'll have to meet all the manufactured home requirements that we put in, modular homes, all those requirements, and they
So
have to meet North
modular
Carolina
homes
building
would
code,
fit
yes.
into that?
If they were, as long as they fit those requirements, yes. Now, if it's gonna be an accessory home, there are limitations on how big, it has to be, we have limitations on the size of that accessory structure to the primary structure. If it's on its own lot, though, a separate home, a tiny home. that
Tiny
was
home on its
Built to
own
North
lot.
Carolina, North Carolina building code and, meets all those requirements, yes, could certainly be allowed.
So a modular home's not like a mobile home. They have different
They're-
structures.
The only thing we,
Right.
the only thing we currently restrict on a individual lot is basically a single wide mobile home. Those are still restricted to mobile home parks. But as long as we put in standards, what was that,
2 years ago?
Couple years ago, something like that, we put in standards regarding double wides and modulars. If they can meet those standards for their structure, to make that structure safe and those types of things, and all the requirements we put in there, those are now allowed on some individual lots.
So a modular is a stick-built, or it can be a manufactured?
It can be modulars usually manufactured, you come in, 2 or 3 pieces. The one going on.
That's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
at, the pieces
Yeah,
together.
the one that went in on Swiss Avenue, just up there, that Mr. Banks is familiar with some of the
Oh, yeah,
runoff and those
that
times. That was a modular home that went in. It wasn't stick-built. from the
Yeah, the
bottom
parts
up.
were built in the factory and they ship them
Yeah.
in and stick them.
But
on.
it's on
Yeah.
a foundation like
It's on a
a stick-built
foundation.
It has
house.
a, it has a
Yeah.
foundation.
It has a
And that's
foundation
some of
like
the
a
requirements that
stick-built.
we have in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
that they have to be on, permanent foundation, those kinds of things. They can't be sitting there on wheels and those types of things.
Well, that's the only one, that one up on the hill.
And it's
Across
a
from
new
Home
one, it's a
Place.
brand new one, right?
Yeah, it's over on Home Place,
Yeah.
across the street. from
Right
it.
next
Yeah.
to the
Mhm.
farmer's market
Yeah,
house.
on
Yeah.
Swiss Avenue.
Yeah.
One with all the mud coming down the driveway.
Yeah. We-
We've had some.
We're working
thoughts
on
about-
that.
I drive that road every day.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I drove down it one rainy day and
Yeah.
emailed them a picture. Look at this.
Is that-
The lot.
It was a
not the home,
mudslide
But the lot.
coming down the
did.
street.
Yeah, that's
I
what
With the
mean,
addition of the
that's
secondary
all
buildings
buds
on these
coming off
lots,
of
do
that
they have
lot.
to adhere to the setback, the same setback?
We have requirements, they can't be too close to the primary building.
In case somebody were to try and subdivide at a later date?
Well, and see, that's where we run into, I think in the past, it's not always worked out exactly correct, but the way that's supposed to happen is that any subdivision of any property, even if it's just split one in half, there's supposed to be a plat recordation with us. And that's supposed to happen before the county allows them to subdivide anything. And if they decide they build some home and then they say, well, now I'm gonna subdivide it, but they don't have enough lot space, that subdivision should be not allowed because they don't meet that minimum lot requirement.
Right.
And I know sometimes that was adhered to and sometimes it wasn't. But I'm just saying that's the way the process should work, is that the county should not allow that subdivision. They should have an approval from the town that those lots, 2, 3, however many lots, meet the town subdivision ordinance requirements, which, we just updated recently.
Right.
Okay.
I think that sounds pretty reasonable, those lot sizes.
Yeah. Okay. That's really what we have. It's technically 5 amendments, although the first 3 are all about light industrial. One being the definition, number two being the addition to the use table, and number three being the additional standards that are placed on that for no open storage and the ingress and egress. Then the fourth one would be the design changes, the design standards really for the smaller multifamily development, and then the fifth one would be this density. So,
Is there a maximum lot size in C1?
I don't think we have a maximum one. I don't, now that you say that, let me, I don't want to misquote, but I don't
Yeah.
remember a max lot size.
I'm wondering, somebody came in and bought a block, tore everything down.
Just put a big house on it, a castle.
I don't
In
know.
C1, really, there's no, I mean, there's a maximum height restriction,
Mhm.
but I don't think as far as the lot itself, I think within C1, which is the only district we have that way, I think you can use the entire lot, which, you know, if you think about Appalachian Java or any of the monkey business, they pretty much use their entire lot because of the way they're situated. So I guess that's the way it was written, to accommodate for those so they wouldn't be non-conforming uses.
Yeah.
Yep. That was the justification for going to C3 versus
Right,
C1 on the amendment
yeah.
down there. I don't know if y'all discussed that, but that's part of the
Yeah, we did.
rationale.
We did, we talked about it. But if there's any other discussion, we sort of can have, but if there's not, then it would be, you want to make separate? Okay, the way this is sort of written is separate ones for each item. If you would look, however you want to do this. Actually, I'm going to let Chad handle this because he's the clerk and he's going to get it right.
He's got to keep track of it.
Yeah, that'd be the cleanest, if we just could take those amendments one at a time, there's the five that you just
Right.
explained, and then there's also the consistency.
That's what I was going to get to. The, what did Heather put in there about that? I wanted to refer to, because Heather put some language in here. Let me read this just to make sure that everybody, because each of these need to be, you need to also say whether you believe they are or are not consistent with the future land use. She's made some references to where those are referred to within our comprehensive land use plan. They had to do with, she didn't actually spell out each one of them, she's listed the page numbers they're on. They had to do with economic development, that was one of our plans, also making more use of infill property. All these sort of fit in with that, and also aligning our, I was trying to, there's one about the light industrial, I think it had to do with making sure that our uses match up with intended future uses of some of these places to allow for economic development. All those things, I didn't have to bring my actual comprehensive plan, but she's referenced the page number where these things go along with that.
The light industrial, what
Yeah.
category of land use would that fit in?
Oh.
Industrial, or would it be a new category called light industrial?
It really kind of would be its own, because we don't have,
Yeah.
again, we don't currently have an allowance for that. This would be another type of enterprise, development enterprise that we would be making a provision for within our zoning district, because currently it would basically be, again, it would take a map amendment at this point to currently even have one.
Probably be in the commercial and maybe the mixed use.
Yeah. You're talking about for the future land use?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the future land use, that's, you're right.
Yeah.
In the current land use, it would be in any of the C1, 2, or 3, but not in residential.
2 or 3, but not
Right.
residential.
Two,
not one.
yeah, not one, 2
Right,
and 3.
2 or 3, correct. So if you want to just go, we'll just go, if it's all right with you all, we'll just go one by one. I'll just stay at member 1. If you don't remember what it was, I'll remind you, and then we'll just take a vote and just kind of go through them that way. Would that be all right? I don't want to upset anybody. All right. With regards to amendment 1, which is the definition for light industrial, I'll need a motion and a vote.
I'll make that motion to
Thank you.
recommend that to council.
Okay. Second.
I'll second that.
Abe seconds that.
I'm not voting because I'm absent.
Okay.
Since they've already started the voting, I'm in support of what y'all do, okay?
You're here, you can vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if
If
you're
you
here, we
wrote-
don't.
Oh, okay, well, if I'm obligated to vote, I'll vote.
Okay.
Did you show where
You're
he came
still
in the
running the
meeting or
show.
something like that?
No, you're here now. You're here now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go
Okay.
right ahead.
You were just delayed.
Now, you should have stayed out.
I didn't know you were
Did you get what you needed?
I'm good, number two.
Number two would be the same light industrial, adding that to the use table for C2, C3, and I1 only, and not R10 or C1. I need a motion to
I'll
vote.
make a motion.
I'll second.
There you go. All in favor?
All in favor? We'll say it together.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
And number three will be the last one about light industrial. These are those two additional standards in addition to design standards of no open storage of stuff, and also their ingress and egress, allowing for those types of things far enough away from intersections to not cause traffic issues.
Okay.
Those are two additional standards we put in there.
Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor, aye.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Good on that one. All right. Number four is the change, just the addition of the language excluding smaller multifamily developments from design standards, still leaving that apply to larger developments like apartment buildings and those kinds of things.
I
That
would
was
make
the
that
amendment.
motion.
Okay?
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right. And then number five, I've already forgot what number five.
Density.
Oh, the density size, yes, thank you. This is the amendment to the density, the table of standards for our density uses. This is lowering in C3 from 10,000 square foot to 7,000 square foot, and in C2 from 10 to 5, but leaving R10 and I1, and C1 and I1 the same. That's,
Oh, we're not changing C1? That's
No,
already
Right,
in.
it's none.
Okay,
yeah, that's, the only two changes are C2 and C3.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Pass.
And the last would be the consistency statement, that you say these are or are not consistent with the land use plan. You can do those individually, or you can do those all at one, whatever, however y'all prefer.
I think we can do those
Okay,
as one, and
okay.
I'll tell you what, I'll form it, I'll say, for the consistency statement, we agree that all of these are consistent. So by voting A, you're saying all five are consistent with the plan. By voting nay, you have a problem with one, and then we'll deal with that.
Okay.
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, they're all acceptable as being consistent.
All right, I'll turn that back over to whoever would like to take it back over, because that was what I had. We're on number 5 of the next meeting, unless someone has something else.
I don't think we need to vote on that, do we?
Actually, October 11th.
Yep.
Could be cooler, yeah.
Just so y'all know, I have been approached about a subdivision project. He has not got his ducks in a row. If he does, I said, we'll have to sit down and go through your plans. He might want to meet before the October. I said, once we make sure you have everything, we'll check with the planning board and see if the possibility of a meeting before October is available. But I said, he's not got me his things yet, so at the moment, I just wanted to put that on your radar, that there might be a larger subdivision project that someone's looking at, but he's not got me his information yet, so I don't know.
Okay.
What happened to Taco Bell?
I talked to them today. They have picked up their permit. They've gone to pick up their actual permits about 2 weeks ago. We provided those. They have a question now about a retaining wall that I've got to get back to them, but it's all been on their end. They've cleared everything with us, unless they're changing the plans. That's what I got to find out about this retaining wall, if it's in the existing plans or if it's new, and if it needs to be an addition or if it's something totally new. I've got to find out about that, but she just sent me an email just a bit ago.
Are you
But-
saying they want the town to put the retaining wall?
No, they just want to make sure that they have approval to do what they need to do.
Oh, okay.
And my big concern is it in the floodway or not? If it's not, it's not that big a deal, but if it's in the floodway, it might hold things up. I don't think it is, from what she has described. I think this is something separate, but I want to make sure, because we don't want any floodplain issues, so.
Any news on the farmer's market schedule?
No, I haven't.
They have moved in
Heard
equipment.
anything?
I did see that.
That's about it.
I did see that.
There was a
There's something
concrete
out
truck.
there.
They have fulfilled their commitment at the last commissioners' meeting, which was they would move in equipment in July.
Is that really true?
It's there. There we go.
And they have put up sediment control, which I'm happy for, because I drive by there.
Right.
I guess technically that's improving the property, but very slightly. I don't know why the project is gone as slow as it has. I don't know what the.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, well, I'm not privy. But they've cleared everything with us. They have nothing else from us.
I did talk to the director of the farmer's market, who's not directly involved with this, it's mainly a county project. And, you know, we're using Appalachian State's doing a lot of the work, and they may actually be doing part of the construction. In fact, they were gonna do a lot of it. And so there's just, it's really a slow process in terms of dealing with them.
Moving forward, too.
Yeah, and that program itself went through a few changes
Yeah.
that we noticed when we were, having them help us design for the new police department and public works.
Okay.
So there's been some changes there. I'm
Yeah.
not privy to the, is
So the county has taken over the construction of the building part, and
that right? And then the other.
the other, at least that's what I've heard through the grapevine, so. Any other business?
Is there an update on ABC?
No, and that's another one that I've been expecting. I've just been waiting for more paperwork, but nothing. So they asked a lot of questions and got some approval early on for their zoning, and then it's kind of been quiet since then. I don't know if that's contractors
Right,
are
are so-
popular right now.
Yeah,
That's what I hear.
they're so busy. I'll bet that's got a lot to do with it.
What's gonna happen to the, over there where the alcohol place is?
You talking about the
The
banks?
that whole section there, that whole.
I don't know, that's owned by an individual that doesn't live here, and
Yeah.
it's rental commercial property, but he does charge a pretty penny, I've been told. I don't know.
Well,
I'm sure
everybody's
that,
moving out, so.
yeah, I'm sure
I
that,
thought maybe they were gonna
if
close
you'd
it
like to
down.
open you up a storefront, I guess he'll sit down and talk with you, I suppose, I don't know, but it's, there is a lot of businesses that moved out over there.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no more business, a motion to move, adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed?